Fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to this Wilson Blade version 9 review. It's a big launch, it's a big release, and we also have Henrik Wallenstens, my good friend, reviewer for the Swedish Tennis Magazine, stringer for the Swedish Davis Cup team, podcast out, so you can listen to that one in audio platforms, and we'll include part of the podcast where we talk about the Wilson Blade V9 later on in this video, and there will be some footage of me playing with the 98 16 19 as well. What's new in the Blade version 9? This is not a huge update, it's a subtle update. I know there's so many fans. This might be the most popular racket on club level, maybe alongside the Pure Arrow. I see it everywhere I go pretty much. I'm sure you're in the same situation. Previous generation, I liked it. Probably the biggest fan of the version 7. Might be my favorite blade in terms of feel. But this one is going a little bit more in the direction of a slightly stiffer response. In this case, it could be good. It opens up the sweet spot a bit, makes it feel bigger, makes it a bit more stable, doesn't require the same amount of weight. So that could be a good thing. And as you know, you can always find this stuff on tennisnerd.net, updated every day, full of tennis predictions, news, gear, and this Tennis Nerd guide to tennis rackets and strings, which I hope you can enjoy. So there are a few things that are there since the previous generation. Direct connect technology. That's when the butt cap is fused directly to the carbon fiber. That's supposed to increase stability. Seems to work pretty well. They have this 45 layup technology. Layup is what's inside the racket. Which increases, I'm having to quote here, lateral flexibility to complement the explosive vertical mechanics of the modern game. What that is that the racket seems to flex more for this type of motion, this type of swing, which is modern tennis, where topspin generated semi-western to western grips and so on. So that's a little bit similar to what they're trying to do with the shift, vertical bending and all that stuff. Kind of is in the same jargon. Would love to have a Wilson tech guy to talk about these technologies and how they approach it, because I did like the shift. Not for my style of game, then this blade certainly works better for me. It's very much a racket in my liking. They also have stable feel technology, introduces a slightly firmer construction, and this is what I'm talking about. These rackets are slightly firmer without being arm unfriendly and stiff if you look at the RA rating. So I've said this many times, but it's good reiterating. The RA rating of the racket, you cannot look at it as kind of just a sign of how comfortable a racket will be. The RA rating is measured in around 7 different locations or so. Then that's the average, and a racket that can have a higher RA rating can still play comfortably, depending if it's any kind of dampening technology, what's going on in the layup. So there are many factors. It's very difficult to just look at the RA and indicate some kind of comfort level. Obviously, if you like flexible rackets, you would need to go for lower RA, where you have a longer dwell time in the string bed. And if you like a higher energy return, you want to go for slightly higher RA ratings. That's generally the thing. So this should be higher stability, easier access to power. This is the biggest update, I think, that this is a bit of a firmer layup. I think it's a good thing. I think it feels like the sweet spot is bigger. It's a bit easier to use, which is what I'm needing in my game these days. And there's also a very evident one here. Not my favorite visual part of this racket. I think it looks good. I'm not sure if it looks better than the previous generation. That's a very personal opinion. Most people seem to love it. But this kind of clip and go grommet system, I'm sure it's very practical. It's very easy to do a grommet replacement according to Wilson. However, it does stand out a bit visually and not in a good way. So I would probably go and use the V8 grommets, because it's supposed to be the same mold. So that would be my kind of more visual point of view. I am more of a practical player. I don't care so much how the racket looks. But obviously you have to comment on it, and I think this one stands out a bit, not in the best way. That's just my opinion.
The new blades are really good. I mean, the paint job is spectacular, but when you see it live, it's just amazing. It looks really good. I got the 100, 69, the 98, 16, 19, and the 100, because the 100 is the racket we have been praising a lot. And it's still very good. The swing weight of that one was pretty low. It was 315 strung. The V8 was like 325 strung. So I added some lead to duplicate the old V8 specs. and the 98 1690 in the V8 was very, very low swing weight strung. It was 310. On this one, it was 328 or something like that. So they have beefed up the swing weight quite a bit. They have made the flex a little bit. I mean, it's still the same RA. It's still the same flex, but it feels a bit more firm. So you have a tad more power. It feels better. It feels more, how should I say it in a good way? The V8 was too flimsy. It was not solid enough. The V9 is more solid. The 100 needed some more lead though. It was pretty light in stock version. The swing weight was too light, so it needed some lead. So I've been trying those two rackets. The 1820 I will try next, and also the 104 and the 100 light. But they are grip 1, unfortunately, so it will be difficult to give them a real like a review because the grips are just too small. It's child sizes on those grips, but you will get a feel for the racket.
If we look at the different models, starting from the most demanding to the least demanding, there's quite a few different models in the Blade lineup. The Blade 98 1820 with the denser string pattern, you're going to have more string, so it's going to be a higher swing weight. So this racket is the most demanding, 330 strong swing weight on the Tennis Warehouse average. Usually when you have the 1820 blades, they are quite high in swing weight. They are quite demanding rackets. Some players love them even on the kind of lower intermediate level. That's just how your play style is and what you want from the racket. But yeah, you're not going to get a lot of height over the net for free. You're not going to get a lot of power or depth for free with the 1820. But if you want pinpoint precision, it's a very, very good racket. It's not going to be a drastic difference to the V8. And if you like the V8 and you want to still have the V8, you can buy that at a very good discount right now. If you check, for example, Tennis Warehouse, which are our friends, but I'm sure it's available for sale anywhere else as well. 98 1619 was the one I tried more extensively for this playtest. Henrik has tried a few more. The 324 swing weight is more up my alley, not as high. I can play with 330, but I prefer to be able to customize that way myself, because if you're already in a kind of average swing weight of 330 strong, you might be unlucky with quality control, and then the racket is heavier than it should be. So that's an issue. 62 stiffness, a little bit higher stiffness here. These things don't matter that much. There will be an S model. I haven't seen the specs for that yet. We're not published on Tennis Warehouse while I was checking these specs. Didn't see them anywhere else either. Should be quite similar, a bit lighter usually. The S stands for spin, so it's usually an 18-16 string pattern. And you might remember the old spin effect rackets where they have quite open string spacing. I'm not a huge fan of the Blade 98S. My buddy Andrei Kuznetsov, who's been on the channel, he plays with the S Pro Stock version, which is 18-17. And that racket is pretty good, but you know the strings do move, and I've tested his rackets a bunch of times, and it's a very specific racket. I can play with it, but it's not that easy to use, in my opinion, because the ball has a very high trajectory, which is not my style of play. Then we have perhaps the most interesting one. I think that most people should, if they're into blade, should consider this one or the 104, and that is the Blade 100. And we did do a review, me and Henrik. We talked about it multiple times on the podcast, how good the V800 is. And it's a very, very good racket. Nice feeling, good balance of power, control, some spin. It has a little bit of everything, not too difficult to use, but still pretty controlled. The beam is not so thick, so 22 millimeters. And this one is very good, 60 stiffness. I think like such a wide player group could use the Blade 100. And it's a racket I easily can recommend. Have not tried V9. Henrik's hitting partner tried it. He was immediately sold, wanted to buy 3 straight away. Henrik also liked it, as he did with the V8. So I'm sure this will be a bestseller, or like a one that sells on an equal level to the 98 if they make it available everywhere. I think the problem with the 100 V8 was that it came out later and it wasn't so advertised from Wilson. The 98s are the ones that you kind of think about when you hear the word blade. But the 100 it should be good. I'm excited about that one. Then there's a 101L, which is a little bit stiffer, lower swing weight, a little bit more for intermediate players that like a lighter racket. Pretty low weight on this one, I would say. So not something, I'd look into personally. 275 grams approx. 1620 pattern, which is an interesting change. And a slightly thicker beam. The most interesting, beyond the ones I've already talked about, is the 104. And that really surprised me in the V8 model. I really enjoyed hitting with the 104. It's an oversize. Well, it's not quite oversized by the definitions set by the racket industry, but it's definitely a larger head size than most rackets that you see on the club level. And 104 square inch with a slightly longer frame. And usually when you have the 27.5 inch length, or 69 or 0.9 or 70 centimeter length, you're gonna suffer a bit from the maneuverability. But in this case, it's a lighter frame. It feels pretty fast through the air. Even has some room for customization. As you will see coming soon, I have an interview with my buddy Sergio, who runs a tennis club nowadays, used to play on the ATP tour. And he plays with the V8 104 with some lead tape on it. And he plays really well. I mean, he hits with futures players, and he's like 52 or something like that, and plays high-level tennis with the 104. So this is definitely not a model just for old seniors or something like that. This is a serious racket that can be used on pretty high level. So definitely something to look out for as well, the 104, which impressed me. Bit of a hidden gem. There's the lighter version of the 100L. Thing to note about the 100L is that the layup seems quite different. You know, it's a stiffer model. The 100L was always stiffer. When you have less weight, you either need to make sure that most of the weight is in the head, so you have some stability when you actually impact the ball, or you need to have at least a stiffer layup, so there's not too much give in the racket head. You need to obviously have that stability on impact, which a stiffer or a heavier frame can give you. So good to know if you're going to buy that and customize it. It might play a bit different than the 100. That's an interesting one. And then there's the 100 Ultra Light. That's very light for more beginning players, I would say. Still a 22 millimeter beam, mid stiffness. So also a racket you can customize, but you need to add a lot of weight if you're intermediate to advanced player, which I think is most of you watching this video. Yeah, so I would say the lightest blades more suitable for beginners, and then the 98s, you need to be a pretty good player to maximize the use of the 98. If you're hitting flat, if you want maximum control, precision, I think the 98s are the way to go. For the mass audience, I would say the 100 is the one that should be the most popular one. And if you're open to having a bit more help from the frame, and then maybe some customization possibly, then the 104 is very interesting. Bit of a firmer feel with these blades, like them a lot, really worked for me. It's kind of like more towards the countervail blades, but without the countervail, which kind of removes the feeling. I mean, I was always a bit of a pessimist with the countervail technology, and I thought that many of the Wilson rackets kind of turned for the worse with the countervail. It was an era where we had graphene on the head side, and that was new and not really working so well in the head rackets, and then you had countervail in the Wilson rackets. It was a pretty dark age for tennis rackets, but now we're in a better time. I will make more in-depth reviews of the V9 rackets as I can get my hands on them, but overall a positive experience. Did like the V8. This is slightly stiffer, but not in a bad way. Gives you a bit more on the ball and feels a bit more stable. That's generally the main difference, and it should be easier to change grommets on if you can muster the lime green extra grommets there on. So that's it. Blade V9 first impressions. Thanks to Henrik for the podcast. Listen to that on audio platforms all around the world. Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called these days, in Google and so on. And check out tennisnerd.net for the full specs. And if you want to buy these rackets or anything else, please do so through Tennis Warehouse and using my links. I get a small commission, helps Tennis Nerd keep going. Appreciate all the help I can get. You can also join Patreon or become a YouTube member to support. That's it. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.